Hey there riders, Moto Journo Kris here, and I have just been to the 2021 Yamaha MT launch here in Australia, showcasing the updated MT-09, the MT-07 and also the MT-10, which of course comes across from last year. I thought I'd do a quick comparison of these three models, or maybe not so quick, because they could be options that riders will upgrade through, while I'll have a separate video on the MT-09 alone, and you'll be able to read my write-up at mcnews.com.au. MT stands for Monster Torque, and these three models all tick that box in their own way. Let's start with the MT-07, the most popular of the MT models, due to a competitive buy-in and often being considered a viable beginner machine in markets where larger capacity is the norm. Here in Australia, we have the MT-07 Lambs, or a 52 horsepower 655cc version, and a high output version, which is the same as everyone else's 70 horsepower machine. I had the opportunity to test these back to back, and it really solidified my thoughts that the 655cc Lambs version is a seriously good motorcycle, because jumping from that onto the HO or 70 horsepower version, you really only get some additional top end and longer legs. There's not really any difference where you're going to be riding this bike for the most of the time. Now obviously an extra 20 or 40 kilometers of top speed could well be important to you, but I would say the MT-07 is very much built around that characterful 270-degree twin, the CP2, and it's a punchy and fun engine that is really rewarding in the mid-range with a solid top end. Why do I mention this? Well, for my typical street riding, I'd say the Australian Lambs version has more than enough performance and speed, and I'm not sure I'd even worry about grabbing the HO. After all, the Lambs version here resells better, as every new rider needs to go through the restricted bike stage. The bike is Euro 5 for 2021, and there's a different, uglier header with big collector as a result. Otherwise, it's basically the same as the previous year model. That means an ultra rideable package, and while compared to the MT-09 and MT-10, the suspension feels more relaxed, less taut, and a bit more soft. For me at 70 kilos, I could ride over any road conditions with ease, know the suspension was more than up to the task, while the exceptional chassis would keep the bike pointing in the right direction, rubber side down with good feel. The brakes aren't anything crazy, but they do the job well. I think I'm lucky at 180 centimeters and with a 32-inch inseam, in that I also fit the bike probably perfectly for a fairly sporty naked bike feel, and that does mean I'm instantly comfortable jumping on board with an easy reach to the ground and narrow feel between the legs when that foot or feet is down. The MT-07 also gets the styling update, and while I know some people don't like the new MT headlights, I think they are good but not amazing. Obviously you've got an LED projector, while I think the screen from the MT-09 adds a lot more style, cleaning up the overall front end. Hopefully the same or similar will be available for the MT-07. There's no new electronics package, the dash remains a simple digital unit, but one that really does suit the darker side of Japan theme, with ultra readable information, and you just get ABS. No modes, no traction control, no quick shifter. The quick shifter I wouldn't have minded, especially for the price of the MT-07 in 2021. The MT-07, like the whole range, also offers an upright commanding seating position that lets you easily tuck in when the riding gets sporty and the fun really starts rolling. I'm no super fast rider, but what I really love about the MT-07 is that the engine has a beautiful character with some nice mid-range kick, which ensures the thrills keep coming and you're really riding the bike and making use of most of what is there. The handling is neutral and the bike is easy to hustle through the twisties and suburban traffic alike, and while the suspenders are in some ways fairly basic, they've evolved nicely since the first iteration of the MT-07. Maybe not enough for everyone depending on what you're expecting, but if you're seriously tracking this bike, then common sense would say upgraded suspension and brakes are probably necessary, like most machines in this price range, or buying something designed to be a track weapon. For a regular rider though, you'll be able to have plenty of fun on the MT-07, and I'd say it'll be a forgiving and rewarding machine, road and track. The right-away price of the MT-07 in 2021 is $12,399 for the Lambs version or $13,199 for the full power, high output version. I do kind of wish the Lambs was a little cheaper or offered a quick shifter as standard, which I do realise is harder to implement on a bike without ride-by-wire, And the MT-07 is undeniably a bit old school by today's standards, but I think that is part of the appeal. Upgrading from the MT-07, you have the new MT-09. I'm not going to go into full details, there's just too much to cover and I'll probably bore you with the technical stuff. Needless to say, the MT-09 is a much more balanced machine in 2021. The previous version was updated in 2017 and they added a lot of refinement and better suspension for a better overall package. The 2021 is just crazy value though. It's now 15,249 here in Australia of course, which marks a small increase from last year, but now packs so much more in. The old MT-09 had a fairly different handling characteristic carried from the 2013 original, which had a tall front end and motard feel to it. In comparison, the new MT-09 has dropped the steering stem, shortened the forks and seriously sharpened up the overall handling in an utter transformation of this bike. If you wanted a sportier machine, the 2021 MT-09 delivers in spades, with suspension matched to the new frame and the ergonomics also lightly updated. You're still very upright and there's very tall risers on the bars to get them high enough, but the weight, feel and balance of the MT-09 is updated, making it lighter, more agile and just a much more natural handler with exceptional front end feel. Some might have liked the more front end demanding feel of the previous model, but I was just blown away jumping on the bike as to how good that handling is now. The triple offers incredible torque too, with more capacity, much more torque through the mid-range, and plenty of refinement, meaning better throttle transitions with a staggering amount of acceleration and a beautiful free-flowing engine feel. Yes, it retains much of the feel of the previous MT-09s, but there's refinement there without trading off the character of the CP3 Triple, and the electronics package is pretty crazy too, now including an IMU. This gives you a lot of settings to play with, but you know what I like most? Yamaha have added all that and kept the price down. I think we're at the stage where electronics shouldn't have a huge impact on the overall bike price, and the 2021 MT-09 certainly suggests that's possible. There's an up and down quick shifter as well, although the downshift does require you to be riding fairly hard to activate it. In the past, I'd have been very tempted to stretch from wanting an MT-09 to the MT-10, but that's no longer the case. If anything, I'd say the MT-09 now has the potential to steal prospective MT-10 buyers. Is it better than the MT-10 at 2/3 the price? I'd say no, but it's exceptional enough that it'll be a tough choice now. Again, at a 180cm and 32-inch inseam, the MT-09 was an easy reach to the ground for me, while I could easily lock into the bike quite casually with my knees. Although I did find moving around on the bike the least natural of these three MTs when we had some time on a private road, which isn't necessarily to say it's bad, just that I found it easier on the MT-07 and the MT-10. I also sat more in the bike than on it, which is more akin to the MT-07 and MT-10 again, making for a better connection to the bike. Now sure, Yamaha have just announced the R7, but now I'm thinking we'll probably need an R9 as well. The brakes were quite gentle on the bite, most noticeable in the rain, but there was plenty of power there, and while I can see people demanding Brembos, I think the setup is nicely balanced to the bike, with more than enough power for my admittedly not that fast needs. Suspension on the front was flawless for me, but the rear did occasionally get out of shape over the really rough sections. However, I wasn't able to do any adjustments, so I'd have to see what's possible within the stock settings. For all the MT-07 is softer and less taut in the suspension department, I do like that softness from the shock, as it makes the often terrible Australian roads a little bit more of a comfortable experience. On the MT-09 there was more harshness from the rear in comparison, however at the private road it was great with some very nice tarmac to ride on. I'd definitely say if you're thinking of track riding and questioning whether to get an MT-07 or an MT-09, while I think the MT-07 will be the easier and more forgiving machine in some ways, the MT-09 is going to be much better equipped and more rewarding in the long run. Obviously the MT-09 gets a styling update like the MT-07, and it's certainly got some people being very vocal. Now I'll admit I didn't see the new look and fall instantly in love with it. It's very compact and I see why people get antsy over the styling. That said, with the smoke screen added, I think it's good. The projector headlight and full LEDs all around is also good to see for this price point. The TFT display feels like keeping up with the Joneses. It's a small 3.5 inch TFT and the surround of the dash is fairly big, further dwarfing the TFT itself. It's nice and clear and does the job, but honestly I'd have settled with the dash from the MT-07 if they could have got those modes to display through it. That's just me though. I know some riders now feel a TFT out of the box is a must. So what about the King MT, Yamaha's MT-10? Well, in 2021 there's no updates. This is the same as the 2020 model, but it's an exceptional machine. In some ways the MT-09, to me at least, feels much closer to the MT-10 now. It's more balanced and has that more mechanical road holding feel. However, the MT-10 feels glued to the road, which in part is no doubt due to the solid feel of the bike overall. It's not that it feels heavy per se, but it is a substantial bike, and particularly in comparison, the MT-09 feels lighter. The crossplane MT-10 though is a gem with this beautiful mid-range punch of torque that is accompanied by a bit of a roar and leads into that beautiful top end. There's some parallel here to the MT-07, which has a punchy kind of midpoint, where the MT-09 is a bit more linear and smooth throughout. The MT-10's punch, which from memory was from around 7,000 RPM, can catch you out. It really comes on strong, particularly in mode 1. However, it's well fueled and the modes will gentle that down for you if needed. The MT-10 also feels the biggest of the line, again with nice open ergonomics, but being wider across the seat, which will impact reach to the ground for shorter riders. I still find it very manageable, and the centre of gravity and balance of the MT-10 is exceptional. That extends to the overall ergos though, with fairly wide bars too, while I'd say moving around on the MT-07 on the private road was easiest, followed by the MT-10. Certainly I'd say the MT-10 still holds an edge over the MT-09, just because the bike's road holding is so amazing and it confers an enormous amount of confidence, which I really like on the road. The MT-09 does that too now to a great extent, but not quite at the same level as the MT-10, I wouldn't say, and the feel of the two bikes and the character is quite distinct between these two models. It's an exceptionally neutral machine at the end of the day, with the engine having minimal impact on your line, with a great ease of line correction and ability to pick any line and make essentially any mid-corner correction. Like I said, I think this comes down to ease of use. The MT-10 has the ability to make me seem like a much better rider than I probably am, and I like that feeling. The MT-10 brakes also have a bit more power on the initial lever action, and I did notice I was getting some rear ABS activation on some road sections where the road was rough, and I was keeping that rear on to modulate speed a little. The suspension is a great mix of sport and control, and the MT-10 is a real standout in this regard. At one point on the MT-10 SP in comparison, I did hit a big bump which even that electronic suspension couldn't seem to get its head around, and that was really painful. I didn't have that issue on the standard MT-10, but I do have to acknowledge that it was probably one of those fairly rare road undulations that really did not like being accelerated over at speed. The MT-10's electronics take a back seat to the MT-09 now in 2021, lacking the IMU and with a TFT only found on the SP model. It's likely the MT-10 will receive a styling update to match the 07 and the 09, and maybe we get the same R1 style electronics package that we're now seeing on the MT-09. However, I've got to be honest, in all the time I've spent on the MT-10, this time and previously, I've never wished for cornering ABS or traction control. Of course, you only need to use it once to save your hide, so I guess that's not really the greatest justification for not having it. So which bike is for you? It's really a matter of figuring out what kind of rider you are, what you like, what feature or specifications you value on a motorcycle, and then seeing which of the MT models fits that motorcycle-sized hole in your life. I'd say the MT-07 is an ideal advanced beginner or mid-capacity machine. In some ways it is basic, but the engine character is exceptional and well worthy of the MT moniker. The chassis forgiving and the overall package exceptional. If you wanted a regular run around that you can have fang on, the MT-07 will do it all, no fuss, no frills. A lack of electronics may be an issue for some, but are they really necessary? Probably not. It's a super popular machine because the overall package is such a solid option. Competition in the 650 range is heating up though, so essentially just a styling update may not be enough for some. The MT-09 takes things to a whole new level. Better balance, better handling, better feedback, better road holding, better electronics, better engine in comparison to the previous MT-09. Sure, it doesn't have the super fancy brakes or suspenders unless you go up to the SP with the upspec forks and Öhlins shock. However, at the end of the day, it'll offer more thrills than the MT-07 at higher speeds, where the MT-07 does start to flatten out up top. It's also realistically far more of a scalpel than the MT-07, however, the strength of the 7 is in that pure usability. The CP3 triple character and power generation is also beautiful, and this is the best iteration yet, keeping in mind I have a soft spot for triple cylinders in motorbikes, not cars. I thought the old MT-09 was good value and liked the overall package, but for a small price increase, the 2021 MT-09 has really revolutionized what's on offer and, most important, kept that price super competitive. I also think it'll be more rewarding than ever before, especially for those really into their sporty riding or track days, while moving away from the older style of naked bikes, which were a lot more basic, softer sprung, obviously they were still upright, but they were less sporty and more general use inspired. The MT-09 now feels much more sports bike inspired. The MT-10 is of course the big guns of the MT family, and the Crossplane 4 is a staggeringly good engine, combined with a chassis that offers an unbelievable level of confidence. I do think the disadvantage of the MT-10 is that it makes me seem like a better rider than I am, where on the MT-09 I have to earn that feeling, or on the MT-07 I can explore the actual limits of the bike somewhat, but for a road bike that also converts into high levels of confidence on our often dangerous roads. The big question for many will be between the 10 and the 9, and that's never been a harder choice. The MT-10 does have the win in the braking department, while I'd say the planted mechanical grip feel is a huge boon as well. But the MT-09 counters that with a lighter overall feel and really sublime handling. The engines are both amazing in their own way and offer exceptional soundtracks with stock exhausts, which is nice to see. The MT-09 has, however, taken the lead when it comes to electronics, although you'll need the SP for the cruise control. Plus, the MT-09 is essentially 2/3 the price of the MT-10, which on its own lends it a fairly large advantage for those on a budget. You'll have to make the final choice yourself, but we're certainly lucky with the updates on the MT-09 for 2021. So what do you reckon of these three machines? Which would you pick and why? Let me know down below in the comments, and as always, stay safe out there. Thanks for watching.